This Jocks 94.5 podcast is brought to you by Millennium Satellite and Video. Log on to msbnow.com. TV excellence everywhere. That's Millennium. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning starts now.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. You can listen online, jocksfm.com. App is in the App Store, iPhone, Android. You can download it for free. Bill Connelly going to join us in just a moment. But you can join all of us at the Jocks Kickoff Party. Damian, tell our listeners how.
Yeah, celebrate the kickoff to college football with us at the Bill Smith Buick GMC Jocks Kickoff Party at Regents Field on Thursday, August 21st. And the only way to go is by winning tickets. This week is the last week of qualifying. To enter to win a pair of tickets today for you and a guest, text the keyword football and your full name to 205-834-9450. Again, the keyword is football and your full name to 205-834-9450. Winners are drawn and notified daily. For more information, visit jocksfm.com.
All right, let's go to the Higginbotham Highline now. Welcome in Bill Connelly of ESPN. There's a pressing question, Bill, that we have had for quite some time. You put out your returning production charts months ago. It's been a long time, and we meant to have you on then. We didn't. Now that we're approaching college football, I wanted to have you on for multiple reasons, but this has to be solved. Returning production for players that were productive but not productive on the team that they're currently playing for the previous year. How do you factor that in? The guy that rushes for 1,100 yards at Boise and is now playing at Michigan, whatever. How does that all play into your returning production?
Yeah, I mean, really, I keep calling it returning production because it's easier, but it is returning plus incoming production. It's the simple way that I was doing this 10 years ago is still it's effective enough to keep doing. You basically take that 1,100 rushing yards and you plug it into Michigan's or whoever's, the numerator and the denominator, so to speak. So you lose a starting quarterback, but you also go get a starting quarterback who had the same number of passing yards, and you return 50% of last year's passing yards. And that's the best way. Like if you bring up a guy from FCS, it only counts for like half the weight. You only get half credit for that. But otherwise, I've tried to keep things as simple as possible, and it's at least reasonably effective.
When you look at freshmen, and I know returning production's a different animal, but how do you project the freshmen's contributions, a la Bryce Underwood at Michigan? Do you base it off of recruiting ranking? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it really, the preseason projections are still loosely based on what they've always have been. There's a returning production aspect, there's a recent history aspect, and there's a recruiting rankings aspect. So for Bryce Underwood as the example, it's not going to really factor in all that much. Like, he's going to impact the recruiting rankings, which will, because I mean, you're basically looking at for the production you don't return, how good is the caliber of the athletes, that you're plugging in there. And so that'll be part of it. But Michigan, it's really interesting. Michigan ranks uncomfortably high. My final SP Plus rankings are going up tomorrow, or projections are going up tomorrow. Michigan's going to be like 8th, and it makes, I don't like that. I don't. That's a little too high. But even without factoring in that they signed the number one high school quarterback in the country, the overall numbers still look pretty good for them.
Yeah, you think he's going to help somewhat. It's just it's tough to kind of roll all that into the same spot. Right. So who should we anticipate will surprise people maybe on the positive end when your article comes out tomorrow? A team that because we just went through teams that we think can win a national championship. Some of those are going to be long shots from an odds perspective, but who do you feel like people are going to see in maybe some of your numbers and say, wow, okay, that's better than I imagined?
I think, the biggest one, and this has been the case all off season, so if you've seen like the February projections or May, you're not going to be surprised. But Alabama being second is certainly against what the polls say, and that's where they're going to start in SP Plus. And biggest reason is, what SP Plus tries to gauge is it's not looking at who you beat and who you lost to. It's not a resume rating. It's purely designed to be a power rating. They graded out pretty well last year because even with last year's late season collapse, when they looked good, they looked better than just about anybody in the country. Like that win over LSU was about the most impressive anybody looked all season. So their upside was still pretty obvious, and they graded out okay because of that. So, combine that with good returning production, like the defense returns quite intact, especially by Alabama standards, and good recruiting rankings. I know why they end up number 2. It's still a little higher than I would rank them if I was a pollster, but it's still they're right in that mix, and I think it's going to throw people off because they look so poor at the very, very tail end of the season.
How do you factor in the second-year coaching boost? Well, I know a lot of your focus is on returning production. I get that, but there has to be some type of quotient that would account for comfort level within the system. Ryan Grubb's addition, Kalen DeBoer's second year, Kane Womack's second year. How does that factor in?
Yeah, I've attempted a little bit of a coaching. There's a little bit of a coaching part in the equation this year, just based on a couple things. First of all, there is kind of a second year effect. It's not as trustworthy now as it used to be, since you can now sign 50 transfers in your first year and everything. Like, everything's a little bit blurrier than it used to be when you could kind of count on if a guy's going to break through, it's going to happen in year 2. So that's not a huge factor, but also just how you've been performing against your historical average, like Oklahoma as an example. I wanted to kind of incorporate that because OU's offense last year was shockingly bad, worst they've had in 25 years. And we know just instinctively there's going to be a progression toward the mean this season because all the factors that went into them having a bad offense. It's probably going to, I wanted to bake in some improvement in that regard, especially if it correlates with a coordinator change. So, Alabama last season not grading out as well as they had been on offense and changing their coordinator. It's not going to specifically say that Ryan Grubb's the coordinator, but it's just going to see that there's a new coordinator and kind of factor that in as well. That's not a huge factor because with coaching changes, everything's zero sum, and even if the new hire makes sense, it's only going to impact things so much if everybody else's hires make sense too. But I did try to incorporate that at least a little bit.
Bill Connelly joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline of ESPN. As you heard him just state, the updated SP rankings will be out tomorrow. But going back to the post-spring, Bill, I think the biggest surprise for most people had to be Ohio State being at 1. Just because of the massive departures from where we view productivity first, quarterback, running back, now receiver, a lot coming back still, but they did lose the school's all-time receptions leader at the end of the day, no matter how you want to play that defensive line, sacks, TFLs. I mean, all the places that we emphasize statistics felt like they took multiple massive losses. How could the Buckeyes be there, and do you think they're going to be there again?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ohio State more than anybody in the country besides maybe Georgia gets the kind of the benefit of the doubt when it comes to any recent history factor is going to favor them dramatically. Any recruiting rankings factor is going to favor them dramatically. And the fact that, national champions usually lose a ton, and therefore the fact that they only rank in like the 80s or 90s in returning production because they do, the skill core, especially the receiving core, is still pretty experienced. There's some decent, especially in the secondary, I believe, on defense. There's quite a bit returning. So, that the fact that they rank in the 80s or 90s for a national champion is actually pretty decent. And they are projected to fall a little bit. It's just everybody around them is also projected to fall a little bit. So it really is interesting. I mean, with the preseason polls this year, I felt Texas was overrated at number 1, but I realized that I was going to think anybody was overrated because it feels like we just have a bunch of 3s and 4s this year, which could make for a really interesting national title race. But there was nobody that was going to end up number 1 where I was just going to be like, you know what? Yes, that's absolutely the number 1 team in the country heading into the season.
Is there a team, and you referenced Michigan already, I think that's a great example, but outside of maybe the Wolverines, is there a team that kind of shocked you with how the numbers have kind of sorted out for them that you think could overextend?
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to be 9th, and that's another one that I'd have them in the teens probably. But again, it's same reason as Alabama. They graded out so well last year. Their losses, from a statistical standpoint, were a little on the fluky side. Like, even though both Kentucky and Florida were closer than they should have been, still, like, the stats those games produced suggested, like, Ole Miss is going to win that game more often than not. And you think about some of the plays, especially in the Kentucky game, like, yeah, that was still, that's best of 7. Ole Miss probably wins in 5 or 6 games. But they did lose, and so it looked really weird when they finished last year second in SP+, and the main reason was their upside was so enormous when they looked good. I was mentioning Alabama, LSU. Did anybody all year look better than Ole Miss did against Georgia, for instance? So, Yeah, they finished second last year. They lose a ton. I don't love their transfer haul as much, but because they ended last year so high, they only fell so far, and therefore they're only at 9. And I'd probably have them a little bit lower than that.
A team that I'm just going to kind of take a flyer here, Bill, and Bill Connelly joining us in the Higginbotham Hotline, that I feel like is going to be sort of a statistical anomaly right now, and maybe even through a large portion of the season. South Carolina was 17th in your post-spring rankings. They have a couple of positions that I would imagine statistically would be dominant as far as returning productions. They have a lot lost, and they have a lot of question marks. Where would South Carolina kind of fall for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be 17th tomorrow too, and that's probably about right. I mean, obviously the good things are great, but even last year, I mean, I saw a lot of people have them pretty close to the top 10 just in terms of the individual top 25 rankings and everything. And it does make me kind of uncomfortable too, because I think they're getting a big boost from the good plays Sellers made last year, and we kind of forgot that all the plays he didn't make last year, all the 3 and outs, they were not an efficient offense at all. Even the Clemson game, which I think, any sort of Heisman hype he has, any sort of hype period, a lot of that comes from the Clemson game where he made 2 spectacular plays and they scored 17 points. Like, those 2 plays were almost it for the entire game. And so there's got to be a level of consistency there on offense, especially considering, they have one of the best pass rushers in the country in Dylan Stewart, and that's almost all the returns in the front 6. So it is going to be a really interesting year for them. I feel like South Carolina generally under Beamer has been a team that where the high points are really high and then we kind of forget about the low points. And we'll see if they're able to generate consistency with the turnover involved. I don't know if they will or not.
They're one of the more fascinating teams that I think have some boom or bust potential, but man, I'm a little bearish right now with how much they lost on defense and the leadership they lost on that side of the ball. One other team that I'm really curious about with your evaluation is Texas A&M. Cole and I are kind of split on them. I like the Aggies a lot. I think they're really good along both lines of scrimmage. I think they've upgraded the receiver core in some spots. I think they're going to be healthy at running back, which will be helpful. I think Marcel Reed in year 2 will be better. Where are you at right now with the Aggies?
So every year in July, I have one of my annual pieces that is called the ifs list. Like, how many ifs does it take me to make you a national title contender? So like a new quarterback, obviously, if he clicks, things like that. There are always 2 or 3 teams that only have 2 ifs that kind of lead the way. And this year, those teams were Penn State and Alabama, actually, which maybe I am as high as I thought as the numbers on Alabama. That kind of surprised me a little. But among the batch of 3 if teams, so there's Ohio State, there's Georgia, et cetera, A&M was one of them because they're just not that far away, especially if the running backs are as good as they certainly look on paper. They return in a year when almost nobody at the top of the game returns their offensive line. Their entire offensive line's back, and it's enormous. The defensive line did lose a few people, but still returns a healthy amount of the rotation, adds a bunch of guys with experience on the defensive line. Obviously, the receiving core I don't trust at all. That was one of the ifs. But really, if Reed just develops normally, I'm not sure he has the upside that some of these other SEC quarterbacks do, but we already know he's solid. If he just develops as a normal sophomore would, and if a receiver kind of becomes a reliable go-to kind of guy, what else are they missing from being a top 10 caliber team? They're going to be great in the trenches, and they have at least a solid quarterback. That feels like a borderline top 10 team to me.
Where are you on Auburn? Because some of that production we talked about going from one place to another, there's a lot of it that's coming in. Now, some of that production was also not great at times, but it feels like if you're just going statistics, numbers, productivity, going from one place to the other, there should be a pretty big jump on the Plains this year.
Yeah, I mean, big pieces of the SP Plus equation come from like the success rate, that number where, if you get 50% on first down, 50% of your yards on first down, 70% on second, 100% on third or fourth, like just that on base percentage for football. That's a humongous part of SP Plus, and Auburn was quite a bit more efficient than its opponents last year. Auburn made more big plays than their opponents last year, and that alone should make you like an 8 or 9 win team, except they were so dramatically awful in the red zone, especially on offense. They were so dramatically awful from a turnovers perspective. Those things aren't supposed to be as sustainable, but it happened like every single week last year. And so from a number standpoint, this is absolutely a top 25 team. Like obviously the turnover at quarterback dings them a little bit, but they return a ton otherwise. Like, sure feels like there's a lot going right here, but they were so reliably self-destructive in those areas that it's a burden of proof thing. Like on paper, absolutely top 25, but I gotta see that in a close game, in a red zone situation, that they're actually going to make the plays this year. And if they're relying on Jackson Arnold, like he's got a lot to prove too. So I'm not completely sure that's going to work out. But no, the talent's the talent. It's pretty obvious.
Bill, we appreciate the time, man. Great stuff. We'll be looking out for it. We'll share that article on our social media when it comes out tomorrow, but appreciate you previewing it and giving us some time today.
Absolutely. Much appreciated.
There you go. Bill Connelly of ESPN, SP Plus rankings, how the statistics work, where they go, how they operate. It's kind of cool to hear from him on just how that goes. But we know exactly how it goes at Bromberg's, G-Mac.
Yeah, it's the very best experience you can possibly have when taking into account the possibility of adding something that might be in your family for multiple generations. Go and check out Bromberg's today. You'll understand why. The second you walk in the door, you'll see the incredible selection, the service staff that's knowledgeable, that can get you pointed in the right direction to make sure that you buy a piece of jewelry that your loved ones will absolutely cherish for a very, very long time. So go and check out Bromberg's. They're renovating the Mountain Brook store to elevate that experience even further. But they're still open during renovations, so you can go in and just know that here in a few months, when it's done, it's going to be absolutely state-of-the-art. It was great before. It's going to be even better now. You can check them out in that Mountain Brook Village store, or you can go and check them out at the Summit. It's Bromberg's.
All right, when we come back, we begin to go around the SEC. We'll talk to Steve Robertson about Mississippi State, where they're headed, and you'll hear from multiple coaches for the rest of this hour. That's all next right here on Jocks.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, and three-man front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.
Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It is 8:20, Wednesday, August 13th, right here on Jocks. Appreciate you tuning in. You can listen online, jocksfm.com, apps in your app store, iPhone, Android. You can download that for free. Tell your home smart speaker to enable the Jocks skill. You can always tune in that way. And watch us live on YouTube each and every morning by searching Jocks 945.
Bill Smith Buick GMC is the GMC Dealer of the Year, the national champion of GMC dealers. They've won it 5 years in a row. That's a dynasty. Ladies and gentlemen, they're just up the road, up I-65, exit 310, Highway 31. You can be there in no time whatsoever, and you'll understand why it was worth making that short drive, because the deals they have on the lot are off the charts. Like a GMC Sierra 1500 SLT, really nice vehicle, X31 off-road package, you name it. They got all the nice bells and whistles on this vehicle. You'd normally pay $67,000 or so. At Bill Smith, you're going to get it for around $53,000. $14,000 off the sticker. You can get an Encore GX. It's a Buick Encore GX, sporty, economical SUV, under $25,000. Other places you're paying nearly $30,000. So I'm telling you, the deals are incredible, and the service and the experience that you have working with Andy Cole and Jonathan Yeager is second to none as well. That's why 75% of their business is repeat customers, because you have a better experience when you shop with Bill Smith. Take the short drive up to Coleman. You'll be glad you did. You can also shop online, have it delivered right to your driveway at BillSmithBuickGMC.com.
All right, let's go back to the Higginbotham hotline. Steve Robertson covers the Mississippi State Bulldogs here now to give us a camp update. Offensively, the situation going into last year, Steve, was Blake Shapen had to be healthy to make this offense go. We saw what it was with him and then without him, and it did get better without him. However, that quarterback no longer with the team. Where is this quarterback room right now for Jeff Levy?
Well, I think it's actually in better shape than it was last year. I mean, you know, Blake Shapen is a guy that has had some injuries. I mean, it's not something that's just like been at startable. I mean, you know, he was injured at Baylor, and I think last year the depth behind him was much different, because you had the true freshman Michael Van Buren, who was a Levy guy, and you had Chris Parson, who was a Leach guy. Well, now you've got all Levy guys, right? You've got Luke Krovenhoek, a transfers in from Florida State. You got Kamario Taylor, a guy that people are extremely excited about here. I don't know how much he plays this year, but I think the depth is better. I think the natural talent is better. But the main thing is if State's going to chase a bowl game, Blake Shapen has to be healthy this year.
What about the pieces around them? It sounds like with the addition of Fluff Bothwell, they're still going to run the football. I know it's what Lovie wants to be. But how much will actually be on Shapen's shoulders to be active in the run game? Or is he going to be a little more protected because they have new emergence and more depth at the running back spot?
Yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed that. And they've talked about his playing style, that he can't take the unnecessary hit. He is a competitor, and you know how that goes when the juice is flowing. You want to go make a play for your team, but you know the best ability is availability. This running back room basically returns intact, and then you've added Fluff Bothwell from South Alabama. Of course, you get Davin Booth back because of the Pavia ruling, and that was unexpected. And then Johnny is a guy too that was kind of a complimentary piece last year, but ran for almost 600 yards. And so with the revamped offensive line, and I say that kind of with a caveat because there are 4 guys back that had a ton of SEC snaps under their belt, but then they went and committed a lot of scholarships and a lot of revenue to getting some more offensive linemen once Phil Lodeholt got here. So that's kind of the challenge of the offense right now, is kind of finding that 8 or 9 guys that can make plays for you in the offensive line. But we feel like the rest of the pieces around Blake Shapen, should be capable of winning some football games.
What are the pieces defensively? Because we know how far that group needs to go. We know what the improvements need to look like based on what we saw a season ago. But what are the pieces that are either returning or maybe there that you're hearing could help that unit look drastically different from maybe what they did last season?
Well, it all starts with Isaac Smith. Obviously, he's a guy that plays star, and that nomenclature has been a real challenge for some in the media that are kind of football challenged. But, he's a guy that's going to move around a little bit. As always, led the SEC in tackles last year, but he had to make a lot of tackles because, that front was just like a salve. I mean, it's just one of those deals where there's a couple of games where they started a true freshman in Kyle McClendon and then a junior college guy that they added in June in Corey Clark. And in the Southeastern Conference, that's just not going to get it done. So they went out and spent a ton of money, allocated a ton of scholarship spots to rebuild that defensive line. On paper and on the practice field, they look like an SEC defensive line is supposed to look, and that's half the battle. But, I think the group that excites me the most on this defense is the linebacker room. You add Jalen Smith from Tennessee. You've got a kid named Zachary Tillman that kind of worked his way into the lineup late last year and just flashed every time he was on the field. I think he's going to be a very valuable part of that 2 deep. And Isaac Smith, as the star, is going to line up a lot in the box too. About half his snaps last year basically came at outside linebacker. And so I like the look of this linebacker room, but I don't think they're going to have to carry the burden maybe quite as largely as they did last year, because I do think the front will be better. And I think if they can just be good on defense, they got a chance to get 6. I don't think they got to be great or be elite, but just be good, get some stops, give this offense a chance.
But isn't that, just a massive jump? To go from where they were at 126 last year in total defense to good, obviously that interpretation could be anywhere. But what's realistic? Is it a top 50 unit? What are we thinking here?
And that's a good question, right? Because, again, I think it all starts up front. That defensive line group was so thin last year. And if they can be decent, and maybe it's even top 75, Greg. I think this is a defense, number one, last year was historically bad. And so if they can just be an average defense in the SEC, then, I think some big things could happen. But, you're right. There's a lot of moving pieces to this. You bring in Vincent Dancy as a guy now to coach the edges and the outside backers to generate more pass rush. State had 10 sacks last year. And, a couple of those came in one game, and so it's just ridiculous to think that a program that's kind of been built on the running game and defense historically can't play better defense. And Coleman Hutzler's a guy that Levy absolutely stood behind him and brought in some pieces to help him. You bring in Mac McIntyre and Paul Rhodes as defensive analysts to help pretty much as needed. And so it's not like Levy just kind of ran it back. They went out and made a lot of changes with the personnel group, but also within the coaching staff. And so now it's just time to go see if they can make it happen.
Visiting with Steve Robertson, covers the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and What do you feel like Jeff Lebby wants to change, wants to alter, wants to do differently this year? Is there anything schematically that maybe he looked at last year and feels like going into this year, we're going to handle this a different way? We're going to try to be different in this aspect of our football team, obviously, than just improving on being able to be better.
Yeah, and that's interesting, too. You know, one thing I'll say about Jeff Lebby is, like, last year, win, lose, or draw, like on Mondays, he was always kind of the same guy, right? Like, there was just this even-keel personality with him. The energy in the building was kind of the same. I know that he's a competitor and it gets to him if they lose, but he never really showed that with us. I don't know what he showed with the team, but there was just never this high and low type thing. We've had some coaches in the past that kind of talk to their players through the media. I never got that sense with Jeff last year, but I think the main thing with him is just having his quarterback, Blake, and Van Buren last year. I remember getting the phone call that Blake was out for the year, and I immediately said, well, there goes the season. You know, it's over. It was already in bad shape. And then, well, that's it. So just let Michael Van Buren take his lumps, and then we'll see what happens next year. And then, of course, he's no longer with the program, which may end up being an addition by subtraction, because I think Krobenhock is the guy that gives you a chance to win this year. But I think the whole thing with Jeff is just he's got to go out there and have guys buy into his vision. They played hard for him last year, even in defeat. But I think they've got to believe totally in everything that Lebby is preaching in order for this football program to go forward. And he's a great human being. I mean, after all this program has been through, I remember talking to Mason Miller, who was former offensive line coach at State under Leach, and he's at Baylor now. And I remember calling him, telling him, hey, it's going to be Lebby. And he said, this is what those kids need, because Jeff is a great human being. He said, these kids need somebody to kind of love on them, but also to hold them accountable. And after all they've been through with Leach's passing and then the 1 year Arnett experience, and, you know, things had to kind of settle. And that's what this football program needs, is some continuity and some consistency. And just to have maybe a normal year would be great.
All right, Steve, before we let you go, health-wise, where is Mississippi State right now so far through fall camp?
Yeah, they're a little bit guarded about that, as you know. But, you know, we have a few people that help us a little bit. But, yeah, so far things look good. I mean, they've had a couple guys a little bit banged up. They do lose Kyle McClendon for the year back in the spring, and that was finally announced, you know, at the opening of fall camp. But, you know, but by and large, the group looks to be good. I mean, the few times that we've been out there, you know, we're always kind of monitoring to see who's in the yellow jersey and maybe who's not there. We begin to ask questions. But, you know, so far so good. I asked Lebby after the scrimmage on Sunday, where are you health-wise? And, of course, he knocks on wood, and he goes, right now we're healthy. And so, you know, that's where the things look right now. And, you know, we'll get ready to play a football game here in about 3 weeks down the road at Southern Miss, which, you know, who knows what to expect down there. But Mississippi State's got to focus on Mississippi State. Go out there, run their schemes, and get back to playing Bulldog football.
Absolutely. All right, appreciate the time, Steve. Great stuff. Always enjoy catching up with you. We'll do it again soon.
Hey, man, take care.
There you go. Steve Robertson covers the Mississippi State Bulldogs, joining us on the Higginbotham hotline. A couple of those things that he mentioned, that he referenced, talking about sort of retention of players. We know some of that productivity being gone for Jeff Lebby. But some of the guys that he was able to keep around, we'll talk about those here in just a moment. But first, I'll tell you about Gusty Goulas and the Gusty Goulas Group. When you need to get into a new home, there's one thing that you need to do. Call the Gusty Goulas Group, 205-542-1996. Go to GustyGoulasGroup.com today. You'll see more than 830 five-star Google reviews when you Google Gusty Goulas Group. Serve more than 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the Birmingham area. Also, since 2012, Gusty Goulas Group recognized both nationally and locally as Greater Birmingham, Alabama's #1 team in homes sold. Call them today. See what they can do for you. Brokered by eXp Realty, 205-542-1996, or go to Gusty Goulas Group and start packing. GustyGoulasGroup.com, and start packing. Saber, let's go to clip 18. Jeff Lebby. This is sort of just his thoughts on retaining players, keeping players inside your program.
The retention piece of it, installs have been heavy. We've put a lot on them. You know, we want to create some stress for them to see how they're going to respond. And as you can imagine, there's been some good and there's been some not so good. So a ton to clean up, ton of work to do. But again, our guys right now they're dialed into getting better.
All right. Also, Jeff Lebby yesterday on the defense and where it's catching his attention here as of late.
What I loved was, you know, defensively found a way to create turnovers. and some negative plays. And that for me was a great thing to see from the defensive side of the ball. Man, when they got their hands on the ball, made plays, created some huge momentum plays in the scrimmage. And that was good to see. And it was a unit. Kelly Jones had a score touchdown from 50, 60 yards out, which was great to see. And again, just guys making plays. We've talked about that nonstop. When you're in position to make it, and we got to make it. And so, again, we were far from perfect, but we've got a chance to build on that.
All right, so that's Jeff Lebby out of Starkville updating us on Mississippi State just a little bit. When we come back, we'll go to Knoxville, we'll go to Columbia, South Carolina, we'll go to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and more, a little bit of Oxford, Mississippi to take you around the SEC right after this on Jocks.
The capital of the sports talk nation. This is Jocks 94.5 and JocksFM.com. Birmingham.
800-239-9569. You want to get in, talk anything around the SEC, what's happening through fall camp, what we're hearing, what we're seeing. We'll go to multiple coaches around the league, players around the league, to get some thoughts on how things are progressing so far through fall practice. But first, Sean in Birmingham has a question on the Higginbotham hotline. Sean, welcome into the show. How are you?
Hey, great to be with you guys. Thanks for signing on, both of you, committing to each other. Another great season. You make a great team, I think.
Oh, well, thank you. I haven't committed to anything. But
I didn't know we had an option.
Yeah.
Is there a portal for broadcasters? I mean, we need to explore it.
There were not multiple hats on my table because the things could have gone south if there were.
Well, I think if you stay the course, you'll be living legends. I really do. More so than you already are. So here's my question. I haven't heard this discussed anywhere else, and I'm surprised. So, Greg, you answer this better than anyone else, but I'd love to hear both of you speak to it. If Nick Saban was still the coach at Alabama, would Alabama be rated higher or lower this preseason? Because I think most people would agree that Kalen DeBoer on the field coaching, very comparable. Saban's the GOAT, obviously, building a program. But if we could determine and vote for ourselves, Saban was still the coach, would they be rated higher or lower? I think that tells us definitively if Alabama's underranked or overranked. And I'll hang up and let you guys argue about it.
Appreciate the call. It's an interesting thought because I think immediately you say, well, if the Saban effect was still there, they would obviously be higher. But I do think also, Greg, with the way that maybe the previous season ended, if it were to have gone exactly the way it did last year again, you'd be having a lot of people standing up saying, ship has sailed. This is it. You're not going to get these dominant national title contenders anymore. So I don't know if I look at it and automatically say they would have been higher than 8. Now maybe 6, 7, but I don't think they'd be in the top 3 just because Coach Saban was there.
I don't know if they'd be top 3, but I bet you they wouldn't be worse than 4. Just based on how the media treats Coach Saban and the amount of built-in equity that the program experienced over the course of 16, 17 years. When you're putting together a top 25, what is it a lot of times? It's a lot of risk avoidance, right? Okay, well, you know what? Those that don't have Penn State number 1, why did they not have Penn State number 1? Because of precedent. What's happened in the past? Every time someone discusses Penn State's situation this year, what do they say? They say, well, he hasn't beaten Ohio State. I get that. Guess what? We're singing the same song. They're a tough team to trust. And with Coach Saban, they were pretty dang trustworthy. So if you're an AP poll voter, for example, and you decide to put the Tide in your top 3 in the preseason, then you were probably going to be pretty safe considering Bama made the playoff almost every year of the 14 playoffs existence. So I think it's a little bit of risk aversion when putting together a list, and with Coach Saban and the familiarity that you had with the program, I think it's kind of understandable that he probably was given the benefit of the doubt more often than not.
Sure. I go back to that Rose Bowl finish and how things went and the amount of people that were sort of just waiting to hop on that train of, oh, he's done. Oh, he's reached the end of the road. And I feel like there would have been just easier for that many more people to jump on board with that. Not saying that it was right, not saying that it should be that, but like I know, there are a lot of people that were sort of waiting to to begin to paint that picture of Coach Saban that, his ship had sailed and his time had come and it was going to be never like it was prior, which with how college football is structured today, that was probably impossible anyway. But not that he couldn't have put together a team that can go win a national championship. All right, so but a fair question and a good question and one that I appreciate. Arkansas offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino, offense in their scrimmage, how he thought they fared here recently.
Came out and executed really well early. They were making good decisions and being very accurate. Thing that was fun about it is a lot of different receivers made plays, tight ends made plays. Running back that can take it the distance, so that was fun. You don't have to call so many plays when he can take it and go score. Flashes of Niall Davis out there faster than anybody else on the field, so that's fun. That's really enjoyable.
Boy, Niall Davis had some injuries, but there was a minute when he could get it at Arkansas. Dude could tote the rock. I'm going to go to two that I'm going to love. Greg's going to hate me for this one. First,
oh boy,
Brett Norfleet, one of my favorites in the SEC, tight end at Missouri, a name that you probably need to know if you don't, and how he feels like that tight end room in Columbia is growing.
These past 2 weeks of fall camp, you can definitely see the growth of the room. Some of the younger guys have stepped up, like Jude James. He's had a really good camp. Me and Jay, just kind of getting back out there. So yeah.
All right, that's a room that can help Missouri extend, GMAC, especially with Norfleet on the field. What he sort of adds to the run game that some other tight ends wouldn't can be a big piece of why Missouri maybe exceeds expectations.
Well, if you just look at Missouri, the schedule is why most people are really bullish, understandably, especially knowing that there were 6 teams in the SEC that had losing records in the conference last year, and 5 of those 6 teams are on Missouri's schedule. They also host some of their toughest games with hosting Bama and South Carolina in their backyard. I think Missouri's got everything you could want. The biggest question for Missouri continues to be the offensive line. Eli Drinkwitz basically told us that. I think quarterback's going to be fine. I think running back's going to be fine. I love Norfleet, like you said, one of the better players in the league at his position. I think defensively they got a chance to actually be quite a bit better than last year, potentially.
Yeah.
But the offensive line a huge issue, especially knowing how they do things.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. Speaking of offensive line, here you go, GMAC. Bill Beatenbow, one of the best to do it.
Oh, boy.
On what players are having to do to earn it on the field for Oklahoma's offensive line this year.
It's really like anybody, just consistency. It's not the flash things that they do. It's not the freaky athleticism. It's doing things right over and over. And that's not any position. You know what I mean? As of right now, they're going to play. Whether they start or not, we'll see. I think we're in the 9th practice, but they've proved enough to, have a chance to get on the field. And, I think we've got, some pretty good competition, especially interior right now. So, the biggest thing with every guy is being consistent day in and day out. And especially, when you're going against a really good defense, a really good D-line, you're going to take some lumps, but you got to learn from it and not make the same mistakes over and over again.
All right, so that's Bill Beatenbow on that Oklahoma offensive line, Greg. If it comes together, and if it's just I don't want to just above average, but if it's, like you say, not a liability, man, that offense has a chance to be super scary this year.
Yeah, I think that's massive. And if that offense can gel, look out, right? There can be a lot of really positive things. So they're going to score. That's not something I'm super concerned about. I think continuity and health is the question, right? That was the problem last year. I think at one point they had 5 receivers out. And you have a new quarterback and a new play caller, and they're going to make things tough on the opposing defenses. But if guys are hurt and you can't win matchups, I don't know what you do. So I think staying healthy is the biggest thing for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So it's one of those things where Oklahoma's offensive line last year just went through so many issues, so many problems. Guys healthy, guys not healthy. It's going to be interesting to see just kind of what they can be, what they could be this year. A couple more.
How good can the O-line be? Like, seriously, how good can the O-line be? I know they'll be better than last year, but how good can they be overall?
Yeah, can they go back to that, what was it, the 18-19 Oklahoma group that won the Joe Moore Award? I don't think they can be that good. I think they can be solid. I think they can be top half of the SEC maybe. Do I think they can be better than A&M, Alabama, Georgia? Probably not. I mean, I don't see that. I've seen Troy Everett play. I think he's a solid football player. Nwaiwu, I think, has a Weewu, I think it is. I forget how you pronounce his last name. I think it's Weewu, actually. I think he's like super talented. I think he could be one of the best that they have. Like Jacob Sexton is just kind of a little more than serviceable guy, but can be a good college football player. Like they don't have the guys that they had in some of those groups. Like, I mean, obviously we could say it's about any team, but there's not a Trent Williams there. I mean, sorry, there's just not.
Oh, it's okay.
There's not even a Creed Humphrey.
I don't think there's a Trent Williams on the Philadelphia Eagles too, and they're fine.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Hopefully they have a Landon Dickerson healthy for the upcoming season. But yeah, I think they can be. And listen, like I know with that offense and the quick game and how they're going to spread you out a little bit and quarterback run, they don't have to be a dominant group. They can hurt you a lot of other ways. That's going to help them be successful. Couple more head coaches, couple more coordinators around the SEC coming up next right here on Mac and Cube in the morning.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, and three-man front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Appreciate you tuning in. 8:50 as we inch towards college football season. August 13th, Wednesday. Greg in Atlanta. Be back in Birmingham tomorrow. Before we get into more audio from SEC coaches, players, it's been really comfortable for about the last week here in Birmingham. That is coming to an end. The heat is going to be back, and you're going to want a train because that Alabama heat and humidity can be brutal. Don't let it affect your home and family. Keep them comfortable with an affordable train cooling system. They've been recognized as America's most trusted brand 11 consecutive years, and they're the official cooling partner here at Jocks. Find a comfort specialist near you at train.com. It is hard to stop a train. Okay. Let's go to Oxford, Mississippi. Lane Kiffin asked if the defense playing well enough in the scrimmage for his liking.
Yeah, a combination of that. I thought the defense came out with really good energy, especially after the first drive, and did some really good things and made some really good plays, good pass rush that created some turnovers, good plays in the secondary, and, quarterbacks, like most scrimmages, some that they wish they could have back and some things to learn from in those.
Obviously referencing a little bit of Austin Simmons there, which Lane would go on to ask about some of those or answer questions about some of the errors, mistakes Austin Simmons has made so far in fall camp.
Yeah, made some critical errors and rebounded and played well later on. So that was, I look at in big picture, that's good for it to happen because he really hadn't had many critical errors the entire camp. And so sometimes, it's a lot better to have him in the scrimmage than the game. So it's good to learn from.
So that's Lane Kiffin just on his defense, Greg, and his quarterback. Listen, Austin Simmons still young, like literally in age and in experience. You expect some of those mistakes to happen along the way. There's still going to be some growing pains with this young man, regardless of how impressive he is.
Crazy talented. Doesn't mean there can't be some growing pains. The big thing, though, with the young quarterback is don't try to overcompensate for the previously made mistake. So many times with young quarterbacks, after they make a mistake, we even saw it with Tua in the national championship game against Clemson. As good as he was, as talented as he was, he made a mistake early in the game and tried to get it all back on the next throw. And that just, you can't do that because that's when mistakes can be compounded. And when you compound mistakes, it can spiral out of control. So allow the mistake to live, learn from it, correct it, get it adjusted, and just play the next play as if the previous mistake never happened. And that's hard for young guys to do because you're so badly wanting to get it back for your team. You feel like you owe it to your team because you made an error, and all of a sudden one mistake turns into two, turns into three, what have you. So I think that's the big thing with him. It's not about talent, it's about maturity. And just playing each snap as if it has a life of its own.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Going to Columbia, South Carolina, Shane Beamer, on if he thinks his team further along in camp this year than last.
I would think situational football. There were some days last year where having a new quarterback, whether it be Lenoris or Robbie, and it's their first time going through a lot of those scenarios. There were a couple walkthroughs where I blew a gasket last year, and because it wasn't getting operated and we didn't make good decisions. Not that we're perfect, myself included, because you're always learning and trying to be better in those situations. We did something today that clockwise that, I learned from as well. But I think we're so much farther along from that standpoint where Lendoris goes out there and we do the same thing that we did last year, and it's just and he's just a machine at it. And Luke really good. And they remembered that walkthrough last year didn't go as well, and Luke kind of grabbed me afterwards. He's like, "We got your back this year, Coach. Like we're good. We're so much farther along." And he's right. We spent a lot of time on it, just like last year, and we spent so much time talking about it throughout the season. I think we're farther along, at least at the quarterback position.
What did he say things have sounded like in fall camp so far?
It's like a train noise, like just a train.
What was that?
Deal,
what was that, Shane? Got it. Okay. Sounds like South Carolina's chugging right along. There you go. Okay. Ryan Grubb discussing on why Ty Simpson was named the Alabama starting quarterback.
I didn't know about the opening statement. Hey guys, Ty Simpson's our starter. How's that? Pretty good? Okay, let it ride. What do we got?
Why is Ty Simpson your starter?
There we go. Good follow-up. Ty did a really nice job of, taking care of the football. I think number one, I think Ty is an incredible playmaker on the move, and I think from there, guys like that, you worry, are they going to be able to train themselves to be able to take care of the football? And I just even the room in general, Ty led that charge, but Ty didn't throw any picks last week. He's thrown one all camp. We've thrown 4 total this camp, and this spring, I think at this time we had thrown 15. So I think in general the guys are understanding the concepts and control the offense a lot better as a room, and Ty was the best at that. And so his ability to command and create out of the pocket I thought was the best, make great decisions, and he's just much cleaner on some of the things that you expect an older quarterback to be able to do.
So there you go, Ryan Grubb on Ty Simpson. 1 interception so far through fall camp. You love to hear that news if you're an Alabama fan. The decision-making, the ability to make those decisions cleanly, quickly, accurately. Sounds like Ty Simpson has that under control for the Alabama offense, and that could be good news for the Crimson Tide this fall. Fozzie Whitaker's going to update us on the Texas offensive line health, Arch Manning, and more from Austin right after this on Jocks.
This is McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.